Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I'm here with Dana Cottrell, candidate for Congress in Hernando County, District 11. And we just want to ask her some questions tonight. First, Dana, how are you and the family doing during this time of uncertainty?
We're doing very well. My family's in a little bit of a different situation. My husband works in Okinawa, Japan, and that has been hot and heavy on the news the past couple of days because they just went through a major outbreak. So we were trying to get my son back over to Japan to begin high school, and Japan has cut off all flights, civilian flights from the United States. So we're kind of in limbo right now, like most people.
Yeah, it's ironic that other places are trying to keep, wanting to keep us out now, especially in Europe. I didn't realize that your son goes to high school in Japan. That's really cool.
Well, he just finished middle school here in Florida.
Oh, okay.
And we're transitioning to high school in Japan. My husband and I, we were in Germany. We wanted my son to go to Gulf Coast Academy here in Spring Hill for middle school years and then high school. So we've been on our own kind of deployment, so to speak.
All right. Are you ready for the questions?
Of course.
All right. So my first question I have for you is, what is your opinion of Daniel Webster and the way he's handled his response to coronavirus locally?
Well, we haven't heard much from Daniel Webster. He has not been a leader in the response to the coronavirus. I think he's taking his lead, as he does most of the time, from the president. You will see from his literature, his newsletters he puts out, emails, his Facebook posts. It is basically a copy-paste of whatever President Trump says. And I believe, like the president, Daniel Webster is going to be then saying to the state, it's your decision, it's your determination, we're not going to tell you what to do as a state. And I believe that DeSantis is taking the same route, saying to the local governments, you do what you think is right, and the state's going to stay out of it. So everyone's, to me, in this situation, from the president to our federal officials to our state officials, have all passed the buck to the local municipalities to make decisions. So when things go wrong, nobody's responsible.
Yeah.
So we have not heard from Daniel Webster. He has held no town hall meetings, no virtual town hall meetings, but this is his method of operations. It has been for the past 44 years that he's been a representative at the state and the federal level. He is an entrenched politician, and it is time for change.
I feel like a lot of these politicians, state, local, they're so afraid to go against anything what the president says because they're worried they're going to be tweeted at or lashed out at, and it's just a shame because it's putting people's lives at risk.
Well, that's just a profile in courage right there.
So do you think Hernando County should mandate masks?
I think that we should. I think it's for the safety of everybody who is involved in employment, who is out there every day on the front lines working, for their safety. It is also for the safety of the elderly of our community who are most impacted negatively in for health reasons, but also it's protect yourself from getting the virus. So I think as a mutual respect to those around us that we should be wearing masks. I lived in South Korea for 2 years, and that was way back in 2004, 2005. And back then, when you flew all over Europe, I visited Japan and China, South Korea, Thailand. When you flew all around those areas, everybody wore masks. It was commonplace. And if you were sick, it was expected of you, out of respect for others, to wear a mask. And all the time on flights, we wore masks. Then when my husband had cancer, of course, he would wear a mask to protect and make sure he wasn't getting any germs when he would go out too. So mask wearing is not something new. I listened to some people at some county commissions meetings talk about how they were suffocating in their mask. You will not suffocate by wearing a mask. And I just think that for personal responsibility and accountability to try to stop this, if we want to open our schools and do this in a reasonable, responsible way, that we can wear masks.
Helping others throughout history, there's nothing more American than that. If you can do something for your neighbor, and that's what mask wearing is all about. Yet I saw a recent survey that 92% of Democrats, when asked, say they leave their household with a mask, but only 46% of Republicans do in that same survey. How do you think this became such a partisan issue?
I believe that when we follow and watch our leaders and we take our lead from them. I'm a classroom teacher by trade. And I find that the way, even as a parent, as a mom, the way I interact with a situation is a model for the way my students or my son will interact with a situation. I remember when my son, and we can all kind of relate to this, was a toddler. When he would fall down and skin his knee or hurt himself or just like get a little bump or bruise, we would just say, oh, woo, 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 wipe it off, get up and keep going, and he would. And then I watched other parents interact and their child would fall and they'd go, oh my God, my baby, are you okay? And the baby would be all upset. And, so people take the lead from how you react and how you act as a leader. And I'll go back to that word leadership because it is so important to me that as leaders, we explain to people why this is important. And I think that if President Trump had taken the lead on this and said, yes, as a nation, let's wear masks, we would see that. We can see President Trump tweet racist tweets and talk negative about different groups of people based on any kind of affiliation or association. And he has basically normalized some of that kind of rhetoric and speech in our society. So I think mask wearing takes the same route, that if leadership talked to people in a reasonable way and explained, you're always going to have your group or your fringe that will be negative toward this, but for the majority, we would work toward that. And I think that we've seen that in other countries around the world, promoting healthy, responsible behaviors, and their countries have taken that on as an imperative for their nation.
Yeah, you're right about, him influencing people, because it's like I've met so many Trump supporters around town and you try to be nice to them and have a nice debate and they get so nasty with like the name calling and some of the vile things they say. And he does the same thing. And I don't remember that ever happening with Mitt Romney supporters or John McCain supporters.
I don't remember it ever happening in my lifetime. This is the strangest time I'm living in, and I'm saddened at what has happened to our nation. I'm attacked frequently on social media, obviously, and name called, and I ask people when they do this, I said, you don't know me.
Exactly.
How do you say these things about me when you don't know who I am? The other day I saw a bumper sticker on a car and the bumper sticker said, deport Democrats. And I thought, how did we get to, well, I know how we got to this place. We got to this place because it has been promoted by Donald Trump. And he says negative things, defaming people, and they're just not correct.
And it upsets me even more when I see his surrogates like Kayleigh McEnany or Paris Denard or people like that on TV trying to defend all this stuff he says and explain it away, because it's almost like Trump might not know better, but these people should. Yeah.
No, well, you would think, but I was talking with my son too. You're raised a certain way. And his niece's book is just coming out and talking about how he's raised from childhood and how you get into a certain mindset. And I explain all the time that people aren't born racist and people aren't born to hate. These are learned behaviors from whatever you're taught or told. You're not born to fear other groups until you're taught or told to fear other groups. And I think that that has a lot to do with it. So I think that, again, going back to leadership, the way leaders approach situations is the way that people will react to situations. And
Absolutely.
when you inflame it, it grows.
Absolutely. Like you create a fertile ground for it. And I just want to say one more thing before moving on. You mentioned about the bumper sticker. I saw one the other day that had this cartoon character in a Trump hat, and he was peeing on the name Nancy Pelosi and Mitt Romney. And I'm like, I've never seen that before in any election. Like this us versus them mentality has just gotten so out of hand, as if we're not all on the same page. We're not all Americans. It's a very disheartening.
I've always said you may not agree with policy, but you hope that whoever is in leadership is doing things to best move forward our nation. And unfortunately, I do not feel that way right now.
Absolutely. How do you feel about schools being forced to open right now?
Well, at the federal level, that the ultimatum that the Trump administration has pushed through. But
Well,
I'll talk about that first, and then you can follow up.
okay.
The federal money and spending to the school systems comes in the form of special education spending and in the form of lunch programs. That's where the federal money goes to, Title I. The rest of the money comes from the state for funding. So first of all, we saw that President Trump lost in his Supreme Court case to move monies from the Department of Defense and moving money to fund the wall. So if the president tries to take away money from the Department of Education that's already been funded to schools and budgeted by the Congress, he's going to lose that. So it's going to go into the new budget that will come out and be passed for October 1 for the coming year. And I don't even think I've heard any budget talk. Now that I'm thinking about it, I haven't heard any talk about the upcoming budget. So that'll be interesting to see where we go with that. He's only hurting children if they stop federal funding. So he's only doing things to hurt anybody in his base who would still support him at this point.
That comment really blew me away, I have to say. I'm going to cut federal funding if you don't open your doors. I couldn't believe when I was reading. I shouldn't be shocked anymore, but I was.
It'll be interesting because California just came down, two school systems very divergent. The one in Orange County is opening with no masks and no social distancing. They're just opening. And Los Angeles, I think it was, I'm not sure what school district that is not opening. They're going straight to virtual for the first quarter. I saw that. So we shall see what happens in Orange County. I was discussing this on Facebook today on some posts, and somebody said that we should open, and one of the questions I asked was, well, can you tell me if that's your belief is what number of dead students, teachers, support staff is acceptable to you? Is one person dead acceptable? Is two dead acceptable? 3, 5, 10? Where is the acceptable number for you to open schools? Being a teacher, the logistics of opening schools is just astronomical. Between the buses, the cafeteria, changing class in the hallways, sanitizing doorknobs, getting kids in and out of classes, the teachers interacting. So if one student gets COVID, are you shutting down the school for 14 days? Is the whole school quarantined? One teacher gets COVID, are you quarantined all? Now you're closing for 14, you open up, somebody else gets COVID, you're closed again for 14. My suggestion is that 6th through 12th grade stay home at the beginning of the year. I think that elementary school and kindergarten is extremely important for face-to-face interaction with the children. There's so much learning that goes on and so much that needs to be taught one-on-one that it is very important to do that. But we could work some kind of schedule where you have, because we're class size 22 and 18, 11 kids and 9 kids for kindergarten go Monday, Wednesday, and the other group goes Tuesday, Thursday. So you have 9 or 11 in a room, so you can socially distance and keep that, and the buses have half the kids, but then the high school and middle schools aren't running the buses. So hopefully you can mitigate contact that way. And I'd like to see maybe a hybrid type like that. And then when you're ready to bring the middle and the high school kids back, you could bring the middle and high school kids back. And if you wanted the elementary kids to go every day, you could open the middle and the high school rooms for the elementary teachers. So if you're keeping the middle and high school home, the elementary could be spread across the district of many different buildings and classrooms. So that again would spread out how many students you have in an area. There's a lot to be thought about in this, because you also have to think of the health of your support staff and your teachers, because as they start to get sick, you're not going to have enough substitutes or extra support to come in for services.
I can say as a public school teacher myself, we already don't have enough substitutes. We already have a big problem. We have teachers subbing on their planning period like every day.
Right.
So I've heard all kinds of proposals. Well, what if we have the teachers rotate and things like that? But these are all minor compared to, you still have lunch, you still have dismissal, you still have, I just feel like when you have this many kids in a school and with the way class sizes are, there's really no way to stop the spread except staying home.
First of all, teachers can't rotate at the high school, because a child could be taking 9th grade English, geometry, which is a 10th grade class. They can have their electives, which is mixed 9 through 12. There's no way teachers can rotate. So that's out. The second thing about that is when you have, I just totally lost my train of thought on that one. But teachers can't rotate. So that's just.
Plus we all have 30 textbooks and all kinds of technology. We,
Oh,
take
yeah,
class to class.
what I wanted to mention. We don't even have money for enough supplies, right? We're always out there buying. So now they want PPE and they want hand sanitizers. Where's this money going to come from? I was working at the high school here in the county. They didn't even have air filters in the air conditioning system out in the portables. And when I asked about that, they said, well, we had permanent filters, but then nobody was cleaning them. So they said it was too expensive to put replaceable filters in. So they just put no filters in the air handler. So forget about trying to retrofit the air systems in the school. And we already know how disease spreads at a school, right? As soon as one kid gets it, the whole school's sick. And those are just common kinds of colds and ailments.
We see that every winter with the stomach flu, and we think that's not going to happen with COVID.
Yeah. So I think it's about the safety. Now, I also think, though, when we go to virtual learning, I want to see teachers doing more virtual classes. I know when we did GCA, I met with my students because I was just teaching, and we met during the virtual time twice a week. We had planned meeting, and then students would call me whenever they needed help, and I would video back with them, and we worked through math or whatever on an individual basis. So we do need to meet virtually with our kids, video like we are now. We have Zoom and we have Google Hangouts. We can easily put that in place. I think that school districts have fallen behind the 8 ball, waiting too long to make decisions.
Yeah, and there were some going on, but you're right, there could have been more. All right, I want to switch gears a little bit, but I want to stay on the topic of schools. Before coronavirus and the 2020 election all started dominating the media, gun violence in schools was a big topic in this country. You have a son in public school. If elected, what kind of things will you do to fight gun violence and school shootings?
Okay, so I believe that bump stocks should not be available. High capacity cartridges should not be available. Silencers should not be available because I'm talking about that. I think we should go back to the ban on assault weapons. And when we looked at the numbers on the ban on assault weapons, obviously violent crime with assault weapons went down. I have that covered quite in depth on my webpage, dana2020.com. I am a gun sense candidate. I am supported by Everytown for Gun Safety, and I'm a member of Moms Demand Action for Gun Safety. So we have our Second Amendment, which is ingrained into our Constitution and built into our country. So many people are supportive of that. But I'd like to see us go to more of a permitting process and making sure that as you apply for a gun, you go through a process and then there's levels that you are able to get different types of weapons. I do not believe that the Second Amendment has said that you are allowed to have any kind of weapon, that we are allowed to walk around with grenade launchers or any other type of weapon we'd like to have on our streets, because you have a right to bear arms. And again, this is how you interpret the Constitution, and there are strict interpretation lists and there are loose interpretation lists, and the courts change on how they interpret the Constitution. So my understanding of it would be, as the First Amendment rulings came out, you're not allowed to scream fire in a movie theater to cause panic. I believe that the Second Amendment also is you're allowed to bear arms, but it's not to the extent that you're right to bear any type of arm that you choose.
And part of that amendment says a well-regulated militia, which Republicans forget that part sometimes. And you're already not allowed to own a bazooka or a tank, So I agree. So ever since 1998, we've had Republican governors in charge of Florida's education system. If you ask me, it's gotten a lot worse under them. What are your thoughts overall of Florida's public school system, and what would you like to see change in it if you're elected?
Well, I believe our public school system is one of the greatest opportunities in the world for advancement for students. However, students who are wealthy and are served by wealthy districts and have parents who are engaged in the educational process, they're going to succeed whether it was education in 1900, 1950, 1998, or 2020. Because their parents are engaged, they value education, they understand the importance of it. What we need is to revolutionize how we educate those in poverty. And that is institutionalized generational poverty. And I keep referencing the Harlem Children's Zone in New York. It is a charter school. There are 2 schools open right now, but they run education differently. They don't just educate the child and the whole child, they educate the family as well. And they seek toward economic opportunity to bring children out of poverty. They get them out of their neighborhood. They do mentorships. They do field trips so that children understand that there is a life outside of the 5-mile radius that they are familiar with.
Absolutely.
So those are things that I think we need to look at for our inner city schools, for our poorest neighborhoods, to really help children out of poverty. I think that that is the key to success. But I also believe that education at the high school level needs to get children out of the classrooms. I believe in a mentorship program where children are out, they spend some of the day in class, but the other part of the day or part of the week, they're with businesses of a career field that they're interested in. So I'm thinking about a journalist. So you go and spend part of your time at a Hernando local paper and you learn the business of journalism, and you maybe write a piece for the paper and you read it from the ground up, and you learn about it, and you have a mentor there, and the next year you say, well, journalism wasn't my thing, or yes, it was, and I really want to continue there and continue outreach. I think when we get kids out of the classroom and they see how the learning is applied to the career field, they will be more invested in their education. I also believe that when children feel responsible and a part of their community, they value that community more. Also, building mentorships will help children who may not have as good role models in their lives to develop relationships towards success.
Yeah, those types of career programs you're talking about have been majorly cut the last 10, 15 years.
Yes.
We hardly have any electives left. I want to go back to something you said about the...
Well, I'm not even just talking about electives. This is a totally different way of thinking, where the children are actually out or in the field, out of the
Yes.
school building. So, and this takes money. This doesn't come without funding.
Yes, but if we can fund the Space Force, something like this should be on the list. I want to go back to something you said about impoverished.
Have you watched Space Force? Just a quick.
My wife loves it. I have not
Okay.
watched it, but she thinks that I'll like it. So if you go to some of these schools that are in more wealthy areas, I don't want to say specific areas or specific schools, but you see they have better technology, better facilities, more technology. They have, like, some of them have like enough computers for all their classes. And you go into the schools in the more impoverished areas and they don't have that, where it's like those kids are the ones who need that stuff most. And it just doesn't seem right to me how that can happen. Like, schools should be equally funded. They should be, treated the same. It's like a rich gets rich.
Well, I will tell you one thing. And when I talk to people who are not wealthy and they say, well, I don't understand why I should vote, nothing ever changes for me. My situation doesn't ever change. And I said, because you don't vote, nothing ever changes. Because when you're poor or you're not voting, those in power don't care about you because they don't see you as a vote, and it's not right. We should be looking out for and helping along those who are the most needy above us, below us, above us, because when one does better, we all do better. And that's something that is very important. And I tell them, if you become a voting bloc, people will start to listen.
Absolutely. So even before coronavirus, healthcare was probably the biggest issue during the Democratic primary. You had Senator Sanders, who wanted a Medicare for all system. You had Joe Biden, or Vice President Biden, wants to keep Obamacare, but tweak it a little bit, add a public option. We have President Trump, who says he's got a plan, but we never hear it. What plan do you like the best?
Okay. I think that we should have Medicare as a public option. I think that once people have the opportunity to choose that, and that Medicare is then available to negotiate drug prices, that many Americans will join into a Medicare system. I also believe that when people start to realize the benefits of having Medicare, they will leave their private insurance. Private insurance should not be tied to your employment. And this frees you up to either pursue different career options or interests if you don't have to worry that your job has your health care. And I think that this is very important to carry us through. I'd like to see us get rid of Medicaid and roll everybody into Medicaid, into Medicare, one system, so that when you get rid of the administration of two systems, you have one system. And I think that eventually so many people will be joining the Medicare option that it will make private health obsolete. And that is where I think that that will go, because they will see how much better and cheaper it will be for them. But I also think that Medicare has to be zero deductible on medication and zero deductible for all healthcare needs, because we are strangling Americans. We are making people go bankrupt in medical bills, even those with insurance. Between prescriptions and medical, I can't tell you, even with insurance, I want to say it was about $20,000 out of pocket for my husband's leukemia treatment, Hodgkin's lymphoma treatments. So it gets very, very expensive, and Americans just can't afford to do that. I know so many people who are on payment plans for medical billing.
What would you say to somebody who says, well, if we want Medicare for almost everybody or everybody, then we're going to be paying 40, 50% in taxes like they do in Europe?
Well, the difference is the overhead expenses of Medicare versus private insurance. Private insurance is running, when you pay $1 toward your medical insurance, they're running about 50 to 70 cents overhead, depending on the program you're in. Medicare runs 2 cents overhead per dollar. So you have a very, very different type of system. Even Medicare Plan B right now should be eliminated. And even when you become a senior, it should just be Medicare, everything covered and provided for. Now, what you pay for deductibles and what you pay for your insurance, you should pay a lot less going toward Medicare, because obviously cannot be a free system. However, you will pay less, I believe, and it's been calculated, for Medicare than you are for private insurance right now. I don't say that you drop all private insurances, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is people are afraid of change. You have a lot of people who want to do that wait and see option, and I think that people should have the freedom to do that and see where they want to go. But also, you have so many people who are like the mask issue. You can't take away my right to choice. So when you lock them into no right to choice, they back against the wall and they'll fight back. So keep a choice option. You have a choice. You can go to Medicare. And like I said, I believe that once people see the cost differential to Medicare and that they're still receiving services, because there is not one senior that I have talked to who says, I don't like my Medicare. Right. Every single senior I talk to says, I love Medicare, and they're very happy with Medicare. And if anything, they would like to see it expanded so there would be that additional that they have to pick up for coverage at that point.
It sounds you're in favor of like Pete Buttigieg style, where it's like Medicare for everybody who wants it, but you're not forced into it. I remember that was a debate he and Senator Sanders had a lot.
Yes. Senator Sanders, we've seen that across the nation as he ran his primary, that you had people who were adamantly opposed, and it became like a stump speech for many Republicans to say, look, again, they're taking away choice and you won't have an option. And just like they did a lot with the ACA and brought up a lot of things that were not true about the ACA. Yeah. And I just don't want to get into that debate. You want to have choice, fine, have choice, but this is one of your choices. And again, I believe that once people start to join up to Medicare and see the benefits of it, it will start to phase out private insurance, which also gives a chance for private insurance to phase out gently.
That reminds, talking about that choice, that reminds me of the 2004 campaign. I remember John Kerry saying, if you want to keep high premiums, high copay, high deductible, you can. That's on you. But I think you'll want to go with my plan. I remember that quote from one of the debates. So it sounds like kind of the same thing. Like, choice is there, but, we think you'll like the Medicare option.
Right. It's interesting what you did mention. Donald Trump ran on the platform that he had the best health care plan to come out. It would be rolled out immediately when he won, and it would be cheaper and better than anything anybody has. And we've seen absolutely nothing. Yeah,
well, I remember during the debate, all he would say is, well, the insurance companies are going to compete, so it'll make everything better. Like, what do you mean by that? He's like, well, we're going to have many. He couldn't explain anything. And he just doesn't know.
Well, he did say we would get rid of the ACA and we have a better plan to roll out. and it would be the best and the greatest ever, and there's nothing. It
Yeah,
has to
no
fall out.
replacement. All he's done is repeal the pre-existing conditions clause. So people with asthma, high blood pressure, stuff like that have been kicked
Well,
off.
that's going to go in front of the Supreme Court, but that will not go in front of the Supreme Court until after the election, and that was purposeful, so that if the Supreme Court rules to eliminate pre-existing conditions, then Donald Trump doesn't take that on for the campaign.
That's happening with a lot of stuff. Just like the Supreme Court ruled he can't hide his tax returns, but we can't release them until after the election. That's a whole nother topic. So another category, kind of like coronavirus, climate change is something where we should all be on the same page because it's for the good of all of us. Yet it's a partisan issue. What's your opinion on climate change?
Climate change is real. Science is real. And if we don't start listening to the science and listening to the heartbeat of our Earth, we will have no Earth left.
How do you feel about the president's addressing of climate change?
He has eliminated a lot of regulation on businesses, which will harm our environment. And I do not agree with a lot of the rollback on regulation. If anything, I think businesses have to be regulated more, and they need to be responsible for their actions. We saw this in a lot of waste in the 80s, chemical dumping and waste dumping in the 80s to contaminate water supplies and land. And we cannot continue to do this on our Earth. We look at the difference just in the time that we had lockdown. I loved looking at pictures of India and of Thailand and of Florida.
Yes.
And to see the sky and the air
Blue
quality.
skies, smog gone.
Yes, and I didn't realize just from Orlando, some of the pictures over Hernando County in Orlando, the difference without the cars on the road. And so I believe in a carbon tax. There's a big push for that, and the carbon tax would then go back to the American people. There's a plan that anything you go over the emissions regulated, then you pay a tax on that. And like Alaska, money goes back to the people on that excess with the oil reserves that they have there. Americans would get a check every year for anything going over the carbon emissions. But I also want to move away from oils and go toward clean, renewable energy. And I have a huge statement on that. I just got the email today. The Democratic Environmental Caucus of Florida has endorsed me, and I'm working toward the Sierra Club endorsement. So the environment is a central issue. It's one of my top 3 issues to making sure that we keep clean air and clean water.
And getting energy independent is something that's talked about every election, but then nothing seems to happen with it.
Well, I support the Green New Deal. I support the initiatives to have new industry and innovative industry to lead us into a time of clean energy.
Donald Trump literally called climate change a hoax. Now, I don't want to put words in Representative Webster's mouth, but do you think he believes the same thing?
Anything that Donald Trump has stated, Daniel Webster has pretty much reiterated. Daniel Webster has done nothing in our district to promote clean energy, so I don't understand. He's got very poor rankings on every environmental group out there for his voting. So if you look at his voting record, you will clearly show that he does not support the environment.
Are you going to get the opportunity to debate him this fall?
He does not come out. He believes he has this election won, and he does not agree to debate. And anybody who has contacted us to debate, if both candidates don't show up, then they don't host the debate. He did come out in 2018 to Citrus County. Citrus County had a forum, but it wasn't a debate. Each candidate was asked 3 questions. We didn't get to rebut each other. And then I think we were given like 2 minutes for responses. So we were up there maybe 20 minutes, and that was the end of that.
Sounds like he views a debate as a liability rather than an opportunity.
I just think that he believes he has this won already, and he doesn't have to put effort into it to defend his positions.
All right, I've got 2 more questions for you. One, I got to ask, what's your opinion of the 2020 presidential race so far, and who do you think's winning?
Well, as a candidate, it's an interesting race because we're doing this virtually, so it has been different, but it's been fun to learn. I'm listening to Joe Biden when he gets up and speaks, and I'm listening to Donald Trump as he gets out and speaks. One of the things that has upset me is our tax dollars went to the speech that he did in South Dakota. It also went to the July 4th speech that he gave, which were more campaign speeches than they were speeches for all Americans. So I do not think that that should have been taxpayer paid for. Having said that, I'll go back to the topic of leadership. I just don't believe Donald Trump is a leader. I do not think he has the knowledge to be president of the United States. I do not think he has the knowledge of foreign affairs or an understanding of the nuance of foreign policy, nor does he have his knowledge or an understanding of science. And I just do not believe that that is the direction we want to take our country. Now, Joe Biden was not my choice in primary. However, we have a two-party system, and this is the way the system operates within. But if I had to pick a better choice for president of the United States, I would pick Joe Biden.
How do you think about the potential of a Joe Biden presidency? How do you think he'll do?
I'm excited to see who he might pick for his running mate. I'd like to see him be a little more progressive than he was with the Obama administration. I know he has just worked with Bernie Sanders' group on creating the Democratic platform. And although everything that Bernie Sanders wanted, which I didn't support everything that Bernie Sanders was going for, did not get into the platform, but it is a more progressive platform. So it is nice to see that going into the future, that we're looking at a society that is thinking of all and maybe putting forth people and going back to putting forth education and knowledge first and not a corporate profit model.
And it's very refreshing to see Biden so open-minded to meet with these progressive groups and ask them, their opinion about how he could be more progressive, their opinion on policies and things like that. So he's willing to work.
And that's as we all should. I would love to be invited to any Republican group. I did speak to a Tea Party group when I ran for 2018, and I would speak with them again, because one of the things that I believe is when you are elected, you are not elected as a party representative. You are elected as a representative of the people.
Yes.
All of the people.
That's 100% right. And President Trump thinks he's only president of the people who voted for him. That's what drives me so crazy. Again, it goes back to this us versus them mentality. If you don't want to answer, that's okay. But who do you want to see Joe Biden pick as his VP?
It's hard. Every day I kind of change.
Me too. Every day I change. How about Val Demings today? Last week it was Kamala Harris.
Every day it's kind of a little different. I'm like, oh wow, I'm listening to the mayor of Atlanta speak, and I'm listening to our former UN ambassador speak, and I'm listening to Elizabeth Warren speak, and each day I'm like, well, if Joe Biden wins, if he only does one term, who would I want for president next? Or running for president, do I want somebody younger or more fresh or somebody older? Do I want a minority? Well, of course, I want a woman. Who do I think has all of these values and fundamentals that I believe in? I really do like Val Demings. I've listened to her quite often and heard her speak, and she's very smart, very wise, and I think very strong. My dad is a former cop.
Oh,
yeah,
we have law enforcement ties as well.
So I really like Val Demings. Of course, I really love Elizabeth Warren.
Me too. Yeah. But my mindset when choosing a running mate has always been, rather than balance out the ticket, I always look at it from an electoral college perspective. So I was happy with the Tim Kaine pick in 2016 because I thought that sealed Virginia. At first, I really wanted Gretchen Whitmer to help seal Michigan. But now it doesn't look like Biden needs much help in Michigan. And I think it really needs to be a woman of color. So now it's like, there's so many good choices. It's hard to pick.
Yeah, so like I said, every day it kind of changes with the flow of the news cycle, I guess, and the different issues that come up. So we'll see what August brings. I kind of wish he would make a decision already.
Yeah, me too. But he's being very careful about his vetting process because the Trump campaign is going to operate differently than any other campaign. They're going to attack on anything and everything, as we've already seen.
Yes. And maybe it's good that he waits, because I will tell you, Donald Trump had 4 years to vilify Hillary Clinton. and he went a smear campaign against her like no other. So maybe it's a little bit better that you wait so Donald Trump cannot smear as much. It's kind of like that defund the police commercial that we see right now, and
Yeah.
that just is awful because it totally takes everything out of
Biden is not
context.
for that at all, but they're trying to tie him to. You know, Trump's having a hard time smearing Biden because he's not a woman, he's not a person of color, he's an old white man, just like Trump is. So,
Donald Trump supported Joe Biden in his statement when Biden was going through the sexual harassment claims and said, "Oh yeah, I feel sorry for Joe because I've been through it." And I know.
Yeah.
So it was funny to see Donald Trump come out and support.
If you watch closely, you'll see these little moments here and there where Trump has empathy and acts like a human being. It goes away very quick.
Oh no, I don't think that was empathy at all when he did that. I just think that was Trump knowing that, oh, I've been attacked too.
Oh,
Yeah. I think it was still about him at that moment.
All right. I want to give you the chance to close. I'm not sure how many voters are going to see this, hopefully a lot, but to look into the camera and make a closing statement to them why they should vote for you.
Yeah, I think I've been looking at you, and I know we're supposed to look at the camera, right?
I'm doing the same.
That was on Stephen Colbert the other night. I was like, look at the camera. So I think I'm the best person to represent District 11 for Florida. I represent change. I represent the middle class. I'm a teacher. I understand the values and the troubles that we have going forward, the financial difficulties that we have, looking at home ownership, retirement, looking at keeping Social Security, health care, so many issues that impact us on a daily basis. And I want to change how Congress is represented in our district. I want to make sure that we have an office in every county. I want to make sure that that office is open to everyone. I want to make sure it's student friendly and young people friendly, and having a kitchen and just having an open house kind of feel to it so that everybody is welcome. And then I want to hire grant writers to bring money back to our district in innovative practices and policies and change for employment and green initiatives that I know that District 11 can do. And we see us as a leader for our country in environmental change.
There you have it, folks. Dana Cottrell, candidate for Congress, District 11. If you want to get involved, you can visit DanaCottrellForCongress.com. And here's her social media information.
We're Dana2020.com now. We shortened that up for you.
Oh, okay. Ignore that.
That's okay. That's okay. You can find it. It redirects.
Dana2020.com, and you could like her page on Facebook. And if you ask me, it's time for some changes in Hernando County.
I agree. That's why I'm running.
Dana, thanks so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. We hope to see you sometime soon.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay, take care. Have a good night.
You too.